In Paul Thomas Anderson's One Battle After Another, Leonardo DiCaprio plays Bob Ferguson, a washed-up revolutionary living off the grid in Bactan Cross with his teenage daughter, Willa. When Colonel Steve Lockjaw, a corrupt military official played by Sean Penn, comes after him and threatens to take everything he loves, Bob embarks on an epic odyssey to save his family and face the consequences of his past. And let me tell you, this movie is absolutely insane in the best way possible. Let's start with what makes this movie work on a fundamental level. Every great film needs a compelling protagonist, and Bob Ferguson might be one of the most unconventional heroes we've seen in a blockbuster this year. Leonardo DiCaprio plays him as this paranoid, burnt-out stoner who spends most of the movie stumbling around in a bathrobe, slamming Modelo like it's water, and frantically trying to remember passwords to revolutionary hotlines. He's not your typical action hero. He's a dad, a scared, flawed, deeply human dad who's been running from his past for 16 years. And casting Leo in this role is absolutely brilliant for three reasons. First, he can actually play this. DiCaprio has proven time and time again that he can handle complex, vulnerable characters. Look at his work in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood as Rick Dalton. That insecurity, that fading relevance, that desperation to still matter. Or go back to The Wolf of Wall Street, where he played Jordan Belfort with this manic energy that could flip from comedy to darkness in an instant. Bob Ferguson requires that same range, the ability to be funny and pathetic and heroic and terrified all at once. DiCaprio nails it. Second, he's a huge star. This movie cost $130 million to make. You need someone with Leo's drawing power to even get this thing made, let alone to convince general audiences to show up for a nearly 3-hour political action comedy thriller from an auteur director. His name on the poster is the difference between this thing being a $30 million prestige film and a legitimate theatrical event. Third, and maybe most importantly, it's just more fun. There's something inherently entertaining about watching one of the biggest movie stars in the world completely debase himself on screen. DiCaprio isn't protecting his image here. He's sweating, stumbling, getting his ass kicked, looking absolutely ridiculous in that bathrobe. The gap between Leonardo DiCaprio, movie star, and Bob Ferguson, paranoid stoner dad, is where so much of the comedy lives. He's pretty much playing his own version of The Big Lebowski here. What makes Bob so engaging is that he's both at the center of the action and completely out of his depth. He falls off rooftops. He can't remember crucial information. He's constantly one step behind everyone else. But that's exactly why we root for him. Because he's an underdog, because he's trying anyway, because his daughter is everything to him, and he'll stumble through hell to protect her. DiCaprio fully commits to this character in a way we haven't seen from him in years. This isn't the suave con man from Catch Me If You Can, or the intense businessman from The Wolf of Wall Street. This isn't even that sad emoji Leo from Killers of the Flower Moon. This is honestly way more impressive than that performance, in my opinion. This is a guy who's given up on being cool and is just trying to survive one more day. And somehow that makes him more heroic than any cape-wearing superhero. Now let's talk about Sean Penn as Colonel Steve Lockjaw, because this is one of the most terrifying villains I've seen in a movie this year. Penn plays Lockjaw like a walking nightmare, this steroidal, lip-licking military officer who's climbed the ranks through sheer ruthlessness and anti-immigrant fervor. He's trying to join this secret society of white supremacists called the Christmas Adventurers Club, and the only thing standing between him and that goal is the evidence of his past relationship with Perfidia, a black revolutionary woman. So he needs to eliminate Bob and Willa, not because they've done anything to him recently, but because they're proof that he's not the pure racist monster he's pretending to be. What makes Lockjaw so effective as an antagonist is that he's both ridiculous and genuinely frightening. Penn brings this unhinged energy to every scene. The way he walks like he has a machine gun rammed up his spine. The way he obsesses over Perfidia, even as he hunts her family. He's pathetic and powerful at the same time, which makes him unpredictable. And here's what's crucial. Lockjaw isn't just evil for evil's sake. He has a clear, understandable motivation. He wants power. He wants acceptance from this elite group of white supremacists. He's sexually obsessed with a woman he can never have because it would destroy everything he's built. These are human motivations, even if they're twisted and monstrous. That's what separates a great villain from a forgettable one. Think about someone like Jared Leto's Morbius. What even was his motivation? He's a vampire now, and he's mad about it? Or the villain in Red Notice. this. I literally can't even remember what he wanted because he's just a generic treasure hunting nonsense villain. These villains are interchangeable. You could swap them between movies and nothing would change. I even want to point out Heads of State, a movie I really enjoyed. It was dumb fun with John Cena and Idris Elba, but that had the most basic gangster villain. I thought that movie was totally okay. But that's the difference between a movie that's just fun and okay and a great movie, which One Battle After Another is. It has a very distinct villain with a very distinct motivation. Lockjaw feels specific. He feels like a real person who's been warped by ideology and ambition and sexual frustration into something monstrous. You understand exactly what he's doing and why he's doing it, which makes him more terrifying because you could see the logic even as you are horrified by it. And that's crucial for a film like this. You never know exactly what Lockjaw will do next, which keeps the tension cranked to 11 for the entire runtime. He's not following a predictable villain playbook, he's following his own twisted internal logic. The central conflict of One Battle After Another is beautifully layered. On the surface, it's a chase movie. Bob trying to keep his daughter safe from a corrupt military official, but underneath that, it's about the weight of the past, about revolutionary ideals colliding with the reality of parenthood, about whether the battles we fought in our youth still matter when we have kids to protect. Bob used to be Ghetto Pat, a demolitions expert for the French 75, this radical leftist group that bombed banks and freed immigrants from detention centers. But when his partner Perfidia betrayed the group to save herself, he had to go into hiding with their baby daughter. Now, 16 years later, he's just trying to keep his head down and raise Willa. But you can't outrun your past forever. And when Lockjaw shows up with the full weight of the US military behind him, Bob has to decide whether he's still that revolutionary or just a scared dad. What's brilliant is that the movie never lets him be just one thing. He's both. And his daughter Willa, played phenomenally by Chaste Infinity, represents the next generation, the one that's inherited both his idealism and his fear. The movie asks, is having kids giving up on the revolution, or is raising them to fight their own battles the most revolutionary act of all? That's deep stuff for a movie with multiple car chases and explosions, and it's very Paul Thomas Anderson, which I absolutely love. Here's something crazy. One Battle After Another is 2 hours and 42 minutes long. That's almost as long as Oppenheimer. That's almost as long as The Batman. That's almost as long as Avatar: The Way of Water. Honestly, Avatar: The Way of Water is a little longer. But I never once felt bored, not for a single minute. Paul Thomas Anderson understands something that a lot of modern blockbusters have forgotten. Pacing isn't just about moving fast, it's about always revealing new information, always pushing the story forward, always giving the audience something to grab onto. Think about how Avatar 2 structures itself like a video game. The first hour is all in the forest, the second hour is all on the beach and in the water, and the third hour is all military ships and epic battle sequences. Each section feels distinct, building rising tension as it goes. Your brain registers the shifts in location and tone, which keeps things feeling fresh even across a 3-hour plus runtime. Oppenheimer does something similar. The Trinity test acts as this ticking clock that the entire first half builds towards, and then the second half becomes this courtroom paranoia thriller. The structure keeps you engaged because you're always moving into new territory. One Battle After Another does something similar, but even more complex. It zigzags through time and tone. We're not just watching action sequences back to back, we're learning about Bob's backstory. We're seeing Lockjaw and Perfidia have this intense, disturbing encounter in a motel room. We're watching military raids on high school dances, car chases through the Texas Dip. We're following underground tunnel networks for immigrants. We're getting pop culture references, everything from Batman and Spider-Man to the Flintstones and the Beverly Hillbillies. It's jam-packed with information, but it never feels cluttered because Anderson knows exactly when to slow down for character moments and when to accelerate into action. The editing by Andy Jurgensen is just spectacular. It's efficient without being frantic, deliberate without being slow. There's an entire 25-minute sequence that's all carried by Johnny Greenwood's score, and the score is amazing. I will get into that later. But this entire sequence unfolds over multiple locations where Leonardo DiCaprio's character is trying to track down his daughter Willa, and he goes to Benicio del Toro's sensei for help. The next 25 minutes goes through multiple locations. There's comedy, there's a bit of drama, there's some tension because you want the two of them to be all right, but it's carried by this frantic editing. We're moving to all these different locations, but over the course of about 30 minutes, this whole scene is entertaining, and it's about halfway through the movie. There's only a couple of scenes in this where things slow down. The scene at the Christmas Adventurers Club, there's not a lot of music or CG, there's some close-up shots. Most of the movie, though, is so fast-paced, so you honestly don't even tend to get bored when the movie does slow down. There's a scene in this movie where someone takes a pregnancy test. In most movies, you just get that cliche reveal, a close-up on the test, dramatic music sting, then cut to the character's reaction. But Anderson skips all that. He just shows you the character's face, and you understand everything from their expression. It's more efficient, more cinematic, and it trusts the audience to keep up. That's what great pacing looks like, cutting out anything that doesn't serve the story or character, even if it means skipping moments that conventional screenwriting would insist you need. And Jonny Greenwood's score does so much heavy lifting here. Just like his work on There Will Be Blood, it's this constant tense undercurrent that keeps you on edge even during quieter scenes. Those staccato piano scales climbing up and down, strings crashing in like waves. It's propulsive and relentless, pulling you through the runtime without you even noticing. The score never lets you settle. Even when characters are just talking, you feel like something's about to happen. That forward momentum is essential for a movie this long. And let's talk about the elephant in the room. This movie is incredibly political. It's about immigrant detention centers, white nationalist secret societies, the militarization of local police forces, sanctuary cities getting raided under false pretenses. This is a movie explicitly confronting the Trump administration's policies, even if it never mentions him by name. And here's what's remarkable. It never feels like a lecture. The politics are baked into the world and the characters. Lockjaw is a monster because of his beliefs, but he's also a monster because of his personal obsessions and insecurities. The French 75 are heroes because they're fighting for immigrants and against fascism, but they're also flawed people who make terrible decisions that hurt each other. By grounding the political themes in character and story, Anderson makes them all feel urgent and real without turning the movie into a polemic. You're not sitting there feeling like you're being told what to think. You're watching real people struggle with real problems that happen to have massive political implications. And honestly, that's how political art should work. It should make you feel something first and think about it second. And one of the wildest things about this movie is how it manages to be both a Hollywood blockbuster and an intimate art film all at the same time. This is the synthesis of the two Paul Thomas Anderson churches. On one hand, you have the frenzy of Boogie Nights and Magnolia of the late 90s, that coke-fueled energy of his early films. Those sprawling ensemble casts, the breakneck pacing, even some of that punch-drunk love chaos is in there with its dark moments and sudden bursts of violence. On the other hand, you have that moody, deliberate craftsmanship of There Will Be Blood, The Master, and Phantom Thread, those clear art films, all period dramas with incredible attention to detail and performances. One Battle After Another combines all of it. It's got the scope and energy of his early work with the maturity and emotional depth of his later films. It's entertaining as hell, while also being genuinely moving. And the way it's shot, Michael Bauman's cinematography is just gorgeous. Those car chases over the hills of Borrego Springs, where Chase Infinity's character is being pursued by a white supremacist, are unlike anything we've seen in modern action movies. Long, unbroken shots where you can actually follow the geography and feel the weight of the vehicles. No quick cuts, no CGI nonsense, just practical filmmaking at its finest. Let me get specific here because this is important. Think about how modern action movies are edited. Take any Marvel movie, let's say Spider-Man Homecoming. You're looking at shots that maybe last 1 or 2 seconds max. Quick cut, different angle, quick cut, close-up, quick cut, wide shot. The camera is moving constantly. The frame rate often bumped or slowed down artificially. And there's so much visual noise that you can barely keep track of what's happening. Now compare that to the car chase in One Battle After Another. Anderson holds on shots for 10, 15, maybe even 20 seconds at a time. You watch the cars crest over those hills, disappear and reappear. You understand the spatial relationship between the vehicles. You feel the momentum and the danger because you're not getting bombarded with edits that do the emotional work for you. It's the difference between filmmaking that trusts its audience and filmmaking that assumes you have the attention span of a goldfish. Anderson knows the tension doesn't come from cutting faster. It comes from letting you sit with the danger, letting you anticipate what's coming next. It's reminiscent of The French Connection, that legendary 1971 car chase that was all done in camera. Compare that to something like Netflix's Carry On, which came out last Christmas, and you could tell the actors were never actually in moving cars. They were literally sitting in a prop car in a green screen room. Like, it's so obvious. The difference is staggering. That is what you lose when everything is CGI. When everything is shot on green screen, when everything is fixed in post-production, you lose the tangible reality that makes action sequences actually exciting. The fact that this is loosely based on Thomas Pynchon's Vineland makes its clarity even more impressive. That novel is famously dense and complicated, filled with dozens of characters and subplots that spiral off in every direction. Pynchon's prose is beautiful but deliberately opaque. Anderson has talked for years about wanting to adapt Vineland, and you can see the core elements: the paranoid hippie father, the evil federal agent, the weight of 60s idealism crashing into 80s cynicism, but he simplified it, found the emotional center, modernized it, and built everything around that father-daughter relationship. Where Pynchon revels in complexity and confusion, Anderson finds that beating heart and makes it accessible without dumbing it down. That's a master storyteller at work. And let's talk numbers, because this is where things get interesting. One Battle After Another opened $22.4 million domestically, with another $26.1 million internationally. For a movie that cost at least $130 million to make, not counting marketing, that is not exactly a home run. For comparison, look at the top grossing movies of 2024. Deadpool and Wolverine, Inside Out 2, Demon Slayer: Infinity Castle just became the highest grossing anime film of all time in North America. These are all sequels, franchises, or established IP. Original blockbusters like this are increasingly rare. Warner Brothers has made a major gamble here, betting that audiences would turn out for a 162-minute drama from an auteur filmmaker, the way they usually only show up for superhero movies. And while the opening weekend numbers might seem disappointing, there are reasons to be optimistic. The movie got an A cinema score from audiences. That's far better than Anderson's previous films. Boogie Nights got a C, Magnolia got a C-. Punch Drunk Love got a D+. First of all, those are terrible opinions. All those movies are great. People are responding to this movie in a way they haven't with his other work. That suggests strong word-of-mouth potential. And here's the thing, where did that $130 million budget go? The movie uses almost no noticeable CGI. It's all shot on location in real California settings. You're looking at Leo DiCaprio's salary is probably the biggest single expense. He typically commands $20 to $30 million per film. Then you've got the cost of shooting on actual film stock and VistaVision, all the large format presentations, location fees, and the rest of the ensemble cast. But this plays like an indie film at its heart. It's personal, it's specific, it's weird. The fact that it got this budget at all is kind of miraculous in today's Hollywood. For context, Paul Thomas Anderson's highest grossing film was There Will Be Blood at $76.4 million worldwide. The Master made $28.3 million, Phantom Thread made $21.2 million. Licorice Pizza made $17 million. These are not blockbuster numbers. So in that context, One Battle After Another opening to $22 million domestically in one weekend is actually pretty solid. It's already outperformed several of his previous films' entire theatrical runs. Will it make back its money theatrically? Probably not. But Warner Brothers is clearly banking on the long tail. Award season buzz, word of mouth, the fact that this is being positioned as a major movie event. It's already a frontrunner to win Best Picture. I'd say this and Sinners right now are the movies I'd say I'd vote for. Movies like this used to play in theaters for months, building audiences slowly. That's what they're hoping for here. And honestly, for a movie this different, for a movie that's not a traditional IMAX blockbuster, but is playing in IMAX anyway, for a movie that's almost 3 hours of dense political thriller, these numbers aren't bad. They're a statement that there's still an audience for ambitious original filmmaking if you have the platform. I've now seen One Battle After Another twice. And let me tell you, the format does make a huge difference. First, I saw this in VistaVision at Regal Union Square. For those who don't know, VistaVision is this vintage large format film system from the 1950s that runs 35mm film horizontally instead of vertically. Anderson shot the entire movie this way, and it's only playing in 4 theaters in the entire United States, so I was very happy to get to see it at Regal Union Square. The experience is unreal. You see the grain of the film, the crinkles and imperfections that remind you this is a physical medium. The sound design booms through the theater. The exposed brightness gives everything this classic Hollywood glow. It's not just a gimmick, it fundamentally changed how I experienced the movie. Also, just seeing this with a crowd, it's like when they say you gotta see this with people. It really does make a difference. People were laughing, cheering, clapping. It made it so much of a better experience than when I went the second time. I saw it in IMAX Digital, not IMAX 70mm, sadly, because getting tickets to that is harder than getting good seats to Taylor Swift. But even in digital IMAX, you can see how meticulously this was composed for a large format presentation. If you do have any opportunity to go see this, I would highly recommend going to the theatrical experience. And I haven't even talked about the supporting cast yet. They're all fantastic. Benicio del Toro as Sergio San Carlos, the karate sensei who protects the immigrant community, brings this zen calmness to the chaos around him. Regina Hall as Deandra, one of the French 75 members, brings gravitas to every scene she's in. She's the one who saves Willa from the school dance raid, and you feel the weight of her commitment to the cause. Tiana Taylor as Perfidia is electric. She's this revolutionary with a survival instinct that ultimately leads her to betray everyone. And Taylor makes you understand why she makes that choice, even as you hate her for it. She's really good in this movie. She brings this dynamic and this energy, even if she has a smaller role than most of the other actors. I would say her performance is one of the standouts. And Chase Infinity is also an absolute standout. This is a star-making performance. This is her debut role. She plays Willa with such self-possession and intelligence that when the movie reveals she's more capable than her father ever gave her credit for, you believe it completely. She's not just the daughter in peril, she's a fully realized person with her own agency. Even smaller roles are perfectly cast. Wood Harris, Alana Haim, Shayna McHale as members of the French 75, Tony Goldwyn as one of the Christmas adventurers. Everyone feels essential, like they have their own story happening just off screen. Here's the bottom line. One battle after another matters because it proves that original blockbuster filming isn't dead. It just requires filmmakers with vision and studios willing to take risks. In a year dominated by sequels and franchises, this stands out as something genuinely fresh. Yeah, it's inspired by a Pynchon novel, but it's not a sequel, it's not a remake, it's not a reboot, it's a new story told with ambition and intelligence. It's messy, weird, it's about something. It's about parenthood and activism and fear and hope. It's about how the battles we fought in our youth still matter, but maybe the way we fight them has to change. It's about passing the torch to the next generation and trusting them to do better than we did. While Hollywood collapses into endless IP exploitation, Paul Thomas Anderson continues making films that feel essential and urgent, films that respect their audience, films that understand cinema is an art form and not just a content delivery system. This is what movies can be when they're made by artists who refuse to compromise their vision, when they're given the resources and freedom to execute something ambitious and strange and beautiful. So guys, go see One Battle After Another. See it in the theater, see it with a crowd on a large format screen. It was just so good seeing this opening night Thursday in Regal Union Square in VistaVision. Such a great experience. I love seeing this movie with the crowd. I highly recommend seeing this movie. It's one of my favorite movies of the year so far. So let me know what you guys think. Thank you so much for watching.